By now, the whole world knows about climate change. Everyone knows that the Earth is heating and heating up. Because of the familiarity, we might be lulled into taking all these disasters for granted. And if we do, it is predicted that our life support systems will collapse in the middle of the century. It calculated that if we are not to go beyond this temperature rise, the world must be carbon neutral by 2050. How is the world responding? The UN asked its member countries to do their part, to calculate its nationally determined contributions to climate and to take steps to lower it. But it is the actions of each of us, as individuals and groups, that make up the sum of our country's contribution to climate. Thus, in 2020, after consultations among civil society groups, the Ako Ang Bukas was born. At the heart of the movement is a campaign to lower our respective carbon footprint and then, knowing the numbers, take steps to lower it so that our country will be carbon neutral by 2050. The Advisory Council of Ako Ang Bukas enjoins everyone
to carbon neutrality in 2050.
Quantum leap now, climate neutrality 2050.
Climate neutrality by 2050.
Climate neutral Pilipinas by 2050.
Quantum leap now, climate neutrality 2050.
So do Ako Ang Bukas champion.
Hi, ako si Howie Severino at ako ang bukas. You know I talk a lot, so I have to remind myself to walk the talk. So we treat wastewater at home, we plant native trees like lawaan and molave. I bike every day for transport and leisure. We compost our food waste, and every night I sleep in a bamboo house.
Local government leaders know only too well the complexity of environmental problems. We are to submit. We incorporate the inventory of our carbon emissions. We support wholeheartedly the Ako Ang Bukas movement and will cooperate in taking the quantum leap now towards climate neutrality 2050.
We recognize that our planet's life support systems, from our air, soils, forests, biodiversity, oceans, water supplies, are all in decline. In line with this, we support and will actively engage in Ako Ang Bukas and the campaign Quantum Leap Now to Climate Neutrality 2050.
We must turn around climate change into a climate of real change. Lalo na kayong mga kabataan, nasa sa inyong kamay ang inyong kinabukasan. Alagaan niyo, please.
As humanity stands on the brink of extinction because of bad choices in the past, I will use my power to make a difference and to save the future. Let us all together make a quantum leap now to climate neutrality in 2050.
Ako ang bukas.
Ako ang bukas.
Ako ang bukas.
Ako ang bukas. Ako ang bukas. Ako ang bukas. Ikaw 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 ang bukas. Tayo 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 ang bukas.
Climate neutrality 2050. Kaya mo bang isipin? Kaya yan.
We warmly welcome you to our KAMAYAN forum today. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Your presence truly adds value to this gathering. We will begin with our usual Zoom etiquette reminders, followed by the opening prayer and our Philippine National Anthem. Muli, makakalikasang araw po sa ating lahat. To formally open our Kamayan today, let us welcome our opening prayer, Ms. Carmen Alviar, Coordinator for External Linkages, Institute of Spirituality in Asia, and a GC member.
Let's put ourselves in God's holy presence. Thank the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, the Creator of the universe, we thank you for the gift of nature. We are sorry that we are now facing problems and difficulties because of our negligence and irresponsible action to protect them. As we enter this new year, we are confronted with many environmental challenges. It is only you, our Lord, through the help of the Holy Spirit, who can help us to commit ourselves to take care of your creation for our common good. And this event is a way to open our minds and hearts to realize what is happening. We ask you to enlighten us in this moment of darkness. Give us the courage to stay with us, for with us always to face the challenges. This we ask in the name of Jesus, our Lord, our brother. Amen.
Bayang magiliw, dalas ng silanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisigit. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baghaw, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhatit pagsinta, buhay ang langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Makakalikasang araw sa lahat at Happy New Year! We are happy to welcome you all once again to Kamayan para sa Kalikasan, brought to you by Green Convergence. Before anything else, let me introduce myself. I am Tessa Oliva, the Executive Director of Green Convergence, and I am very excited to be the co-moderator for this month's session, the 427th session, and the first session for 2026. And because we are welcoming a new year, our theme this month is facing the environmental challenges of 2026. Let us listen to the environmental concerns of various sectors for 2026 through our invited resource speakers. Learn about the possible plans and recommendations on how these can be addressed. and gain insights on various ways to ensure ecological sustainability and development for our country. And of course, joining me once again as co-moderator is the Media and Communications Officer of Green Convergence, Marian Luisa Palo. Makalikasang araw, Marian. Happy New Year!
Yes, makakalikasang araw and Happy New Year also, Miss Tessa, at sa ating lahat. Welcome once again to the monthly Kamayan para sa Kalikasan Forum, the 427th session with the theme, Facing the Environmental Challenges of 2026. I think tamang-tama po ang tema natin to kickstart the year, no? We have so much to face and address. And if last year we closed with a spiritual reflection of our purpose and connection with Mother Earth, our shared home, this time naman ay we will bring our reflections with us into 2026. That reignited passion and drive to care for our environment and hopefully witness our actions coming to fruition. And with this, we invite all of you to participate in the discussions. Share this live stream on your timeline. We are live on Facebook right now. Tag your friends and invite them to join in the conversation. It's important that we expand the reach of awareness on these issues as we have much to shed light on for this year.
That's right, Marian. And before we start, maybe we can also greet our participants. Okay, I think we have a lot of participants for this session. Now, just look at your the all the keys down in your Zoom, and with your emojis, as I call your sector, please click your emoji, okay? And we would like to see maybe hearts or hello, okay, with your arms, to let us know that you are here. Are you ready? All right, let's see now. From government, I think we have a lot of them. May we see? Please come up with your emojis. Representatives from the government. We have from Penrose, EMB, Philippine Post Authority, House of Representatives, Barangay, DNR, LGUs, Department of Agriculture, Department of DepEd, and a National Irrigation Administration. Do we see the emojis now? Meron ba?
Yes, marami pong nagsisend ng kanilang heart reactions.
Welcome. Okay, that's the government sector. And this time from the academe. All right, let's see it. We have people from UPLB, okay, from different parts of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao universities. Let's see all those emojis.
Wow, ang dami po. Pulang-pula ang ating Zoom.
Okay, wow, wonderful. All right, how about the CSOs and private sector? Woohoo! Bring out those emojis.
Hello,
Meron?
hello. Yes po, madami po.
Good. All right. And we have from the religious sector and media. Okay. So thank you all for being here with us today. So to officially open the Kamayan Forum and kick things off on a meaningful note, I'd like to present the charming president of Green Convergence, Miss Victoria Vicky Segovia, to give the opening remarks. Warm welcome, Vicky. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Tessa. Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first Kamayan for 2026. And we thank God that we are still here. I had a sorrowful experience as we were preparing for this Kamayan session. We planned to invite a very wise and holy person as one of the speakers for this Kamayan session. I messaged him and was surprised and disappointed that he did not respond to me. Then, our Laudatis Si group chat message last Tuesday asking us for prayers because he was in ICU. And on Wednesday, there was a call to pray for his eternal rest. He is Dr. Wilson Chua. Maybe you know him. He is a staunch volunteer and professor in eco-spirituality, an excellent teacher in UST and San Jose Seminary, brilliant, young, and very efficient and effective. So, when I thought about the thing that happened in 1 week, messaging somebody, then learning he is in ICU, and the next day learning that he passed on, I was just thinking that life is really fragile, isn't it? And we need to make the most of every minute God gives us. Let us all pause for a while and pray for our friend, Dr. Wilson Chua. Please pray a prayer. Please offer a prayer for the repose of his soul and that he will soon join our beloved Creator that he really loved so much too. Eternal rest grant unto Dr. Wilson Chua, O Lord,
and let
and
perpetual light shine upon him.
May he
May he
rest
rest
in
in
peace.
Amen.
Our topic for this month is leading us to reflect on what environmental challenges are in store for us, for our country and communities. Feng Shui followers say that 2026 is the year of the fire horse. Of course, we say that every year is the year of the Lord. But we view with alarm the direction toward dangerous technologies being introduced or even pushed in our country today. I have read somewhere that MMDA is poised to employ waste-to-energy practice to manage the waste of Metro Manila. I also heard that nuclear energy is being pushed as a solution to our lack of electricity and other technologies that we all need to review and understand as to the impacts to our people and our communities. Let us listen to our guest presenters today. We tried to get the balanced views of the important sectors of our society: business, civil society, church, and government, to enlighten us on the urgent challenges that may confront us as a nation in the months ahead. So, take a deep breath and prepare yourself to learn more about the environmental challenges that will confront us in the months ahead, and how we, as green advocates and as Filipinos, can work together toward developing a sustainable path for ourselves and our country. Good afternoon and have a good session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vicky, for the insightful opening remarks and for setting the direction for today's Kamayan Forum. Oh, we're so sorry, we've lost one of our environmental advocates, si Dr. Wilson Chua. We'd like to send our condolences to his family. And tunay, fragile life. And now we have 2026 in front of us, and there might be more challenges on the environment. So let us now start the discussion. Shall we, Marian?
Yes, thank you, Miss Vicky and Miss Tessa. Before we begin, reminding everyone once again of our Zoom etiquette, we'd like to kindly remind our participants on Zoom to avoid any distracting ambient noise. We kindly ask everyone to keep your microphones on mute. This will help ensure that everyone can clearly hear our resource speakers. But of course, we still want to know your thoughts and reactions. No? Feel free to use the chat box to share your comments. We'll welcome them, keep an eye on them, and may even read some of them later on in the open forum.
Okay, so thank you for the reminders. Let me see. We will now introduce the first resource speaker of our program to share with us an overview of the environmental concerns that the business sector wishes to address this year. I have the honor to introduce the Chief Sustainability Officer of the First Philippine Holdings and the Business Task Force Head of Ako Ang Bukas movement. Let us all welcome Miss Agnes de Jesus. Makakalikasang araw, Agnes.
Makakalikasang hapon din. Can you see my slide?
Yes, po, we can see it.
Okay. A blessed Friday to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share the environmental concerns of the business sector and what we're trying to do, and hope that you can include or improve our blueprint so that we can also meet our environmental goals. So as a starter, I'd like to share that this is from the perspective of FPH and in no way represents the rest of the local businesses. So for the environmental concerns of FPH, maybe not only for 2026 but beyond, the main concern of our business is the stability of nature, because nature is the source of our raw materials and the physical protection of our business. The main driver, for example, for us of this risk is climate, because we have experienced floods and this have damaged our infrastructure. It affected how we can access our supplies, because suppliers cannot reach our shop floor because there are barriers due to floods. It also increases the cost of materials, and sometimes if we're not so lucky, we lose some of the materials, especially those related or nurtured by Mother Earth. The other driver for business risk is extreme heat, which affects the well-being of our employees, our suppliers, and partners. Of course, with extreme heat, it lowers the productivity of the workforce. And then we have additional costs for safety and health requirements of our workforce. A third driver of the risk is sea level rise. There's a lot of disruptions in our operation, and also in terms of quantification, the potential lowering of the value of the asset. So it's the main risk for business. Our second problem is how we are going to execute our environmental measures. So we want a stable earth, and we have plans on how to do it, but there are sometimes challenges in implementing the measure. One major example is meeting the global target of decarbonizing every operation of business and every organization across the world down to 40% carbon footprint by 2030 and being net zero by 2050. As a matter of fact, around 94% of all the global companies that pledge net zero targets 2 years ago have actually got out of those pledges. No? But in the case of FPH, we are steadfast on our mission, and despite of all these odds, we're trying our best, and we already have decarbonization targets, and we will pursue this path of decarbonization, recognizing with eyes open that there are problems along the way, but we are resolved to try to mitigate those problems. So in terms of, for example, in decarbonization, there are a lot of problems in terms of the availability of traditional measures. For example, nature-based solutions. It's easy to say, a lot of businesses are mouthing that, but sometimes when you have an unstable or damaged habitat, there is a problem, even for this available measure. And then beyond all of these traditional measures, sometimes the residual emissions, you need technologies. But are the technologies available technically and in terms of economic viability? So number two is the cost of measure. So it has to be properly paced. It has to be properly integrated in your total planning. And of course, there's always the danger of maladaptation. For example, if we shortcut, if there's sea level rise and there are floods in the vicinity of our work site, the shortest way is put up a seawall. But we know that there's a better way, like mangroves, to stop the surge and so on. So we have to be very, very sure in the kind of investment that we will do or we will have, so that we don't lead to this maladaptation situation. The third and last problem I cite, because of the time constraint, is how do we amplify our environmental action so that we can continue to be assured of the flow of materials and support services from nature? Because we know that when we want to protect nature, in order for nature to give us the raw materials and the services, it will require a systematic approach, because there is interdependency of social, natural, and economic processes. And therefore, the challenge to business is for an integrated approach so that we can cover all of these three factors because they are interrelated. And the other implication and the other concern is that the state of nature, or where we are operating in our 50 assets, is always linked to the status of the people. So how do we ensure that nature, people, and business progress together? So let me share with you our simple blueprint, knowing that we can gain insights in this diverse Kamayan audience because of your rich experiences and knowledge, and hopefully we can improve on this blueprint. So for business, we started with the basics, and I think it's the most important action that business can do. And actually, it's one of the actions, major actions, also prescribed by experts. We started with our governance because they dictate the manner in which we will operate. And therefore, in our case, 5 years ago, we embedded or made visible nature and people concerns in three aspects: in our mission, and in our business strategy, our policies and structure. So to give you an example on how governance has a great influence on how our business has operated, when we crafted, for example, our sustainability policy, we depended first on the Lopez values since 1928. And part of that Lopez values is social justice. We also dependent on our 2021 Magna Carta for CSR, signed by all the Lopez members of the family, including all the heads of the Lopez companies, that already included human ecological security, values-oriented leadership, stakeholder engagement, together with business excellence way back in 2021. So using our Lopez values and our Magna Carta as foundations, we came up in 2018 with this sustainability policy that has been embraced also by the board. So in our sustainability policy, we say that we want to improve our people's futures and lives by making sure that as our business grow, the environment and the employees and our stakeholders will progress with us. We also want to invest in responsible growth and investment, and that in the last paragraph it says that all of this will be made possible through our values. So based on those values as foundations, in 2018, we we actually changed our mission. Before 2020, our mission was to invest in key or strategic businesses that will help in the national development of the country. But with the increasing climate disturbances and our own first-hand experience with Haiyan, that actually brought 70% of one of our major projects down, including the communities underneath and the people to our shores in Leyte, we shifted and changed our mission altogether. The, the magnitude of change in our mission was equivalent to the disruption that we experienced due to climate change. So today, our mission from national development shifted to forging collaborative pathways to a decarbonized and regenerative future. This means that we need to consider climate action, including or together with peoples and planet's Earth. So, by having this kind of mission that already embeds or make climate center of the mission, we needed to translate the mission to strategies because the business strategy will dictate the business model or the business activities on a day-to-day basis. And if we are able to continue and pursue everything, the outcome that we want and what we demanded from our 8 subsidiaries is that they create 2 values. Values for the business in terms of stable revenues and steady growth, but also values for others like a healthy environment and a safe and prosperous environment for our communities. So how did we translate this in 2020? So we have 5 business segments in First Philippine Holdings. And so from that broad mission, we brought it down to the level of each and every segment. So in the power segment, we translated our mission through this strategy that all of our power projects will ambition to reduce the carbon intensity of the grid through clean and low carbon electricity. Because if we provide low carbon electricity to the grid, then the rest of the users will also be benefited and be using low carbon electricity. For the real estate like Rockwell and First Industrial Park, the translation of the mission into the strategy is the creation of integrated and climate resilient communities. For the construction sector or First Balfour, we're not only investing in high-value infrastructure for the well-being of the Filipinos, but also we are now more biased to climate adaptation projects like water supply, sea level rise protection, and so on. And then our first PHILEC manufacturing segment or the energy solution segment, we are providing solutions to make the grid efficient so that we can lower its intensity, like creating the green transformer that are recyclable, that has a higher efficiency, and of course our social services segment to produce quality healthcare and education. So that's the context. The second, having acted on the mission, on the strategy, how do we now execute the strategy? So what we did was we developed an integrated pathway to execute it, a pathway that applies both to the enterprise or the conglomerate level and applies at the operating level or the subsidiaries. We also included as a sub-requirement in that pathway the need for us to capacitate the whole organization from the leaders down to the employees so that we can gain competence but also confidence to execute such a noble mission. And the third, of course, is because we are in business, we need to develop what are the material key performance indicators so that we can measure our progress in our mission. So in terms of the mechanism, I'll give you a glimpse. We believe that the first step in executing that kind of mission and strategy is to shift our worldview from looking at extraction and consumption or GDP as the only index of progress. We must consider relationships and reciprocity as the source of real value. And inspired by what our subsidiaries are doing and our noble mission, we crafted this um, simple figure or diagram on how we will execute. So, guided and inspired by the UN Climate Resilient Development Pathway, and in that pathway, it says that the vision of the world should be by 2050, at a warming Earth, the government, the communities, the business, and everyone must be able to survive and thrive. So we see that there are three interdependencies: people, nature, and economy. And how do we now apply reciprocity and relationships in our operation? So we know that nature provides us a flow of ecosystem services from material, processes, educational, and spiritual services. So nature provides people a lot of services, and therefore people must reciprocate by protecting nature, restoring nature, or sustainably managing nature. Also, in the same vein, nature provides a flow of services to the economy, in our case, businesses. They give us materials for raw material, provisionary services or raw materials. They give us educational services. They protect us from climate change and other processes. And therefore, in terms of reciprocity, business must also protect, restore, and sustainably manage the resources given by nature. How about people and business? People give us the social license to operate in their area. They are also our human capital. And therefore, we in business must protect the well-being of our employees and communities, must respect their human rights so that there will be equitable outcomes. By equity or social justice, we mean equity in opportunities and in challenges, in responsibilities, but also opportunities and benefits. And we say that if this loop is completed, a community or people with social well-being, with the good services coming from nature, and good leadership providing social cohesion, resilience, adaptive resilience is given or is acquired by that community or set of people. Nature, if everyone protects nature's structure and integrity, everyone protects, therefore, nature's function. So there's functional resilience. In the case of business, if we are sustainable and we are stable, where we use a part of raw materials but sustain it and do not lose it, we also take care of the people, our partner, so we don't disadvantage them, then there is economic resilience. So that's the very simple mechanism that we're trying to apply in our company. Another important action that we did in order to execute the mission is the upskilling of the whole organization. Immediately after 2020 launching of the new mission, we had deepening sessions with the subsidiaries explaining to them what decarbonization and regeneration means. We developed a playbook on how we will embed the mission in our employees. Also, we look into the mission pillars like human rights in terms of principles, due diligence, and impact assessment. And we tap external experts like the Commission on Human Rights, the UP Human Rights Institute, the Ateneo Human Rights Institute, including the UK Center for Business and Human Rights. And we learned about decarbonization, the science-based targets methods, how we will measure it, what are the available technologies and traditional measures, including how do we determine our targets. Then we look at scope 3 because we need to ensure the amplification of action across the value chain so that we can measure the emissions of our suppliers. Energy efficiency is also an important low-hanging fruit, and we conducted an energy audit of our companies. Waste is also contributory, so we tapped the UP College of Engineering to help us understand our materials conversion to waste, and of course, circularity. And also we did gender equality and diversity training with Deloitte because we know that this is a subsection of human rights. And then we had separate supply chain assemblies where we introduced our social and governance indicators, including holder hand in certain trainings together with AAB on greenhouse gas accounting. We did not forget to check on the standards, the international standards. I think what is important in these standards is the dual materiality, meaning looking at how the business impacts sustainable development or impacts people and planet. That is inside out. And the other one is outside in. How do people and planet impact the business operations and the bottom line? And of course, we need to control the integrity of our data by having a manual on ESG data management from collection to analysis, consolidation of data, reporting. And then the last is an assurance process by an external party to make sure there's no greenwashing. In 2025, we completed our tools from Task Force on Climate Financial Related Disclosures, meaning we taught our subsidiaries how do you do climate scenario analysis, how do you identify your climate risks and opportunities, what are the measures, and then what are the financial impacts on the operation, and how do we translate that to the financial statement. And then we have continuing engagement with our supply chain. We also completed our internal carbon price study because we need to understand the cost of the climate impact and how do we address those. And lastly, we want one unified language in the company, the people in the finance group and the non-finance group. So with the ESG evaluation methodologies, we are converting the social and governance attributes of our company to peso value so that we can really give importance to the non-financial values, but at the same time, have a means by which we can compare both the financials and the non-financial attributes. We also said that we need to have key performance indicators so that we can measure what we are doing relative to our mission. So these are our material indicators right now. We review it every 3 years. We are now refreshing it this year. Today we have 20 material indicators that are now subject to information and consultation. So in summary, for this 15-minute talk, our mission of forging collaborative pathways to a decarbonized and regenerative future is linked to the aspiration of everyone and the contention that sustainable development requires collective action from all of us on planetary and societal health, but also remembering that everything that we do must be underpinned by justice for the equity for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Miss Agnes. Nako, although you mentioned po that these are brief points from FPH's side, I think it vastly links a lot of concerns that fellow businesses may agree on, no? The stability of nature, execution of measures due to accessibility, cost, and danger of maladaptation, and the assurance of continued flow of materials and support services, all while keeping in mind the link of the state of nature and the state of people. There truly is significance in an ecologically sound paradigm to ensure environmentally and even socially inclined business operations. Great that it also reflects in the mission, the strategies, the models, and pathways of FPH. Again, thank you po, Ms. Agnes, for the very comprehensive discussion that I'm sure a lot can gain inspiration from. So, without further ado, yes, thank you po. Without further ado, let us introduce our next resource speaker. Now that we have heard the business side, we now hear from civil society's concerns, and I'm pretty sure there is a whole lot. To share those with us, please allow me to introduce the National Coordinator of Aksyon, Klima, Pilipinas, Mr. John Leo Algo. Makakalikasang araw po, Sir JL.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Leo Algo, National Coordinator of Aksyon, Klima, Pilipinas, the Philippines' leading civil society coordination network on climate action. And I would like to thank Green Convergence for inviting me to participate in this particular session this afternoon. So for the next 20 minutes or less, please allow me to elaborate further on what many civil society groups perceive as critical ecological issues to track and monitor or to follow for the next 12 months in the Philippine context. So please allow me to share my screen for a minute. So from the perspective of civil society groups of the Philippines, the following are some of the ecological issues that we need to follow. And this builds on what we perceive as a year of 2025 that was intended for, in many metrics, to be the most critical year for climate action in Philippine history. Because a lot of so-called milestone events in terms of climate policy development, in terms of climate planning finalization, in terms of international climate conferences, a lot of these happened sometimes in the same time for the past 12 months. Last year, we talk about COP30 that happened last year. We want to talk about development of blue carbon roadmap in the Philippines. We want to talk about the development of a just transition framework, updating our mitigation target under the nationally determined contribution, among countless other climate policies and plans in the Philippines. All of that happened in the past 12 months. That's why last year was supposed to be the most critical in history, but from our assessment, there were a lot more negatives than positives. I think we failed in terms of meeting the urgency, matching our collective concrete actions with the needs of the most vulnerable communities and purging climate injustices. But that was last year. Because the truth as well, from our observation from last year in engaging with policymakers, with communities, even with other stakeholders as well, is that a lot of these policies, a lot of these milestones that were supposed to happen last year in classic Filipino time are instead delayed to this year. So, we cannot also isolate what is going on in the Philippines with what is going on at the multilateral level. Because the nature of addressing an ecological crisis is everything is interconnected. And this also acknowledged by Asia-Pacific experts on sustainability. In a survey that was taken by think tanks GlobeScan and Sustainability, for the past 12 months, these are the following ecological issues that, from the perspective of sustainability experts, must be prioritized. Climate change, biodiversity loss, plastic waste, deforestation, and waste in general. In short, all the issues that the Philippines, especially civil society groups, are pretty much locked on anyway. But just because a survey indicates that these should really be prioritized again does not mean that it's not worth repeating, considering that it seems like, again, from the perspective of CSOs, we seem to be making the same mistakes again and again, despite the fact that we, as a country, are becoming a lot more aware and perhaps not as fast as knowing, but at least beginning to understand more why these ecological issues need to be addressed as urgently, as efficiently, and as just as possible. So, for my presentation, I will emphasize 10 storylines, in quotation marks in particular, starting with the big one, because no matter how many successes we observed last year in terms of climate policy development, in terms of climate action in general, all of that was overridden by one issue. And that's an issue that continues to flood, pun intended, our Facebook feeds, our news cycles in the Philippines. And that is, of course, pertaining to the use of our national budget and the issue of corruption. So, in terms of the national budget of the Philippines, let's start with the big one. This is not over yet. even though some people start to think that it is. But we cannot talk about climate without talking about development. We cannot talk about climate action without talking about good governance. And the investigation on the corruption in flood control projects, which for the past 5 years have a significant chunk of the overall national budget, not just the part of the budget that is considered as climate relevant, but just in overall in overall budget that we're talking about here. So the investigation still continues because, as we have all heard, unfortunately, for the past few months, there's been little progress in the investigations. We've heard that the ICI, for example, the president made a statement very recently that the work of the ICI is supposed to conclude very soon, despite little progress being made so far. And there's still alleged masterminds and participants in these corrupt acts that are still not behind bars. And just imagine what we could have done with the misappropriated funds, billions of pesos. Because when it comes to climate finance in the Philippines, we keep observing that a lot of the plans and programs and projects that a lot of sectors, from government to even business and civil society, for example, that we want to do, the rationale as to why we can't do it is because there's a lack of finance. Kulang sa pera. But I don't think it's an issue of a lack of finance necessarily. It's about access. It's about how you use it. And just think of the lost opportunities. Some of the funds that were lost to ghost flood control projects, for example, you could use it to implement stronger reforestation projects. So those are just examples of the lost opportunities. And let's keep in mind that we're probably going to experience something similar in terms of extreme rainfall and flooding as we've done at the last 2 years alone. And that is because the climate crisis is still here. So there's a lot of injustice going on this particular storyline alone. But that's just one part of the national budget. For the 2026 national budget, that is 6.7 plus trillion pesos, 980 plus billion pesos is supposedly aligned for climate-related projects. The question is it really pro-climate? Because from the analysis of Aksyon, Klima, Pilipinas, for example, for the past 5 years, we don't think that it's really truly 100% pro-climate. And what we mean by that is the allocation of available public finance under our national budget that is supposedly for climate projects, right? It's not exactly aligned, for example, with the priority objectives under our National Climate Change Action Plan, for example. And a lot of it is linked to, instead, physical infrastructure projects like flood control. So going back and linking it to what Ma'am Agnes said earlier in her presentation, nature-based solutions should be funded more, for sure. Not just from the private sector, but also from the public sector. And unfortunately, the 2026 national climate budget, the 980 plus billion, looks eerily similar in terms of being heavily favoring infrastructure projects, supposedly agencies most relevant to climate action, not receiving a lot of the funding. Those issues are still there in the 2026 national climate budget that was recently approved by the president. And that means that it's not only vulnerable to patronage politics and corruption, the pork stuff, but also with funding distributions, again, that contradict the plans, the targets, and the priorities. So those are the issues that we need to keep in mind. And on a side note as well, for us in Aksyon Klima, once we have more data about the specifics of the climate tagged national budget for 2026, we will formulate a short paper on that, an analysis, a detailed analysis of these supposed contradictions that we were mentioning here. Second major storyline that we need to follow is on reducing climate pollution. This is different from air pollution. When we say climate pollution, it's a term that we try to use in Aksyon Klima because greenhouse gases can be a bit technical. I think climate pollution would be a bit more digestible for a wider range of audiences. So when we say climate pollution here, we just mean greenhouse gases. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the supposed milestones from last year is the updating of our nationally determined contribution, or NDC. And just to get everyone on the same page, the NDC is simply the Philippines' commitment to reduce climate pollution as part of the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, of course, aiming to reduce global warming to ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius in the long term that we're talking about here. In the present, our NDC target is at 75%. Avoidance, not necessarily reduction from the previous years, but actually 75% avoidance from a business as usual scenario. So we need to be accurate about how to describe that target because reduction is different from avoidance. They're not necessarily the same thing. But nonetheless, from the consultations held by the government last year, it seems that the 75% will stick in the second version to be submitted during the first quarter of this year to the UNFCCC, or the Climate Convention. But the unconditional target, or the part of the 75% that will be achieved without foreign aid, meaning our national budget. So now you can see how they're all connected as well, and that we cannot take these issues in isolation from one another. But going back to this, the unconditional target is planned to potentially be between 10 and 20%. The previous unconditional target is 2.71%. So it's a significant increase. It could be up to 3 times or almost 10 times as much. And another good news is that protecting our forests and ensuring that they help in sequestering carbon dioxide will be formally and fully integrated into our next NDC. It's a matter of the details now. So that's an issue that we in Aksyon Klima will definitely keep monitoring even after the updated NDC submitted, because it will affect a lot of the aspects of the Philippine economy, for example, from agriculture to energy to transport and waste as well. And of course, it will have cascading impacts on daily living, from electricity prices to cleaner transport to improved health, public health. And the second major storyline on this one is on reducing climate pollution, is what we call unjust transition. So as we mentioned earlier, the Philippines is poised to become only the second country in the world after South Africa to have a national just transition framework. So how do we make sure that no one is left behind? That when we switch to renewable energy, that when our economic sectors are using cleaner energy technologies, because they can be expensive, especially at the start, how do we ensure that workers, formal and informal, I might add, the young people, indigenous peoples, women, rural farmers, fisherfolk, and all other basic sectors or vulnerable groups would not be left behind? So we expect that this will be finished as well during the first half of this year. And I think almost every single person in this room might potentially be affected by this. Third major storyline, energy transition. Since we're talking about just transition, a big component of that is energy transition. So Ms. Agnes also touched on this a little bit earlier, I think, as well as Ma'am Vicky or Ma'am Tessa from earlier as well, no? When talking about waste to energy. Because waste to energy is being pushed by the Philippine government as a so-called alternative or cleaner energy resource compared at least to coal. But it's not just waste to energy. We're talking about gas and nuclear as well. And there are significant differences between the government and civil society over which energy resource does qualify as clean or genuine alternatives to fossil fuels. Gas is, of course, is a fossil fuel in itself. And despite criticism and resistance from environmental advocates and local communities, especially those that are proposed to host these facilities, the push still continues. And we think that it would hinder significant renewable energy development. While we understand, for the most part, the need to diversify our energy base in case, of course, of potential disasters. And the Philippines, of course, we are very much prone to climate-related disasters. We also need to think about long-term scenarios. We also need to think about the fact that we champion climate justice at the global level, and yet we propagate a bunch of potential false solutions. And that only weakens our position internationally and domestically. So these debates are very important because energy security, of course, electricity prices, reducing climate pollution, at some point we have to find a way to really synchronize all of these seemingly at first conflicting priorities, but they're not conflicting. Of course, another issue is breaking free from fossil fuels, because during the most recent climate negotiations, the Philippine government infamously refused to actively call for a fossil fuel transition roadmap, which was actually an outcome from 2 conferences ago in Dubai. So again, we're talking about the Philippine government championing loss and damage actions at the global level, because again, we get hit by typhoons and droughts and sea level rise almost all the time now. But again, if we're not directly supporting a transition, not even an overnight change, because that's not really technically feasible, just a just transition from fossil fuels at the global level, then we're basically contradicting ourselves as a country. And it's worth noting as well that the restrictions in the Philippines' current coal moratorium have basically been removed just a few weeks ago, before the conference last year, because the government says they want to speed up projects that are supposed to be aligned with development. And of course, we disagree with that. Fourth major storyline, biodiversity and ecosystems. Nature-based, protecting our biodiversity ecosystems have never been more relevant. So now there are currently new plans and strategies to strengthen reforestation, preserve blue carbon, aka mangroves, seagrasses, wetlands, and increasing the number of key biodiversity areas and protected areas in the Philippines. So I'm sure many of you have heard about the Philippine Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. That the short version of that was launched last August in Iloilo City. I think Green Convergence was there too. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that, Tessa. But we expect those efforts to continue this year in terms of strengthening existing biodiversity plans. We should note that the current enhanced e-NIPAS law is currently being reviewed, and there's consultations ongoing at the moment of that. So there may still be chances for those of us who want to participate in those nationwide consultations. We might need to contact DNR about the specific schedules for that. And again, going back again to nature-based solutions. We want to promote them more, not just gray physical infrastructure, but there are a bunch of ways to do so. Some prefer carbon markets, very controversial topic, I might add. Others prefer potential public-private partnerships. Others prefer community-led actions with CBFMAs. And others would also look into proposed laws. The National Land Use Act, by the way, is not yet a law. It's still there, along with Sustainable Forest Management Bill. And executive policies that are still under development. So now we need to find the best possible ways to really not just protect our environment, but ecologically sustain our dependence on it. And the fifth and final major storyline I'd like to highlight this year is, of course, international actions. Number one, it's a reminder that the Philippines is the current host of the board of the Loss and Damage Fund. And within these next 6 months of this year, until June 15, the Philippines will develop a proposal to address loss and damage to be funded by this particular global fund. And again, we only have 6 months to prepare submission. I was in Congress yesterday for this, and it's still a lot of work in progress. And we also hope that, at least for AK Note, that we will be able to send this particular survey we're developing over the next couple of days to probably each and every person here. And hopefully you will take 5 to 10 minutes of your time to answer that survey about what that proposal and the overall national strategy should be, because your voices matter. Bottom-up approach matters even more under the loss and damage workstream. And of course, there will be 2 board meetings in the Philippines this year. And the final storyline I like to highlight is that the Philippines is the current chair of the ASEAN for this year. And they have identified, and by they I mean the government, have identified climate action as one of their priority agenda as chair of the ASEAN. So there will be a bunch of events on loss and damage, as I mentioned, on energy transition, a climate change strategy action plan, among countless others. And there will be a lot of regional summits and ministerial meetings held here in the Philippines that not just CSOs and people's organizations, but business groups as well, media and academia will probably be aware of from time to time. Again, given the time constraints, of course, we cannot talk about other issues in detail, but just to highlight the other issues, of course, mining is still there, especially as the current administration is still pushing that kind of narrative. The waste management dilemma, not just the waste to energy, not just the plastics problem, just waste in general. The implementation of RA 9003 is still work in progress as an understatement. Localization of national plans is another important issue to keep an eye on. Because like I said, there's a lot of these national plans, NDC, JTF, Blue Carbon Roadmap, among countless others. But how do we cascade them into local plans, including local climate change action plans, local DRRM plans, annual investment plan, so many plans, but how do we localize them? Especially in a country like the Philippines. Strengthening climate education is another thing. Another national plan on education is actually being developed by the government, unbeknownst to a lot of stakeholders. So as AK, we'll try to also share updates on this, if and when it happens. And the final thing I'd like to highlight before I finish is fossil fuel divestment. Did you know that the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, in their 2022 pastoral letter, pledged to withdraw or divest all of their assets from banks still supporting fossil fuels by the end of last year? We're also preparing a short paper on this through our organization, Leaving the Advocacy Philippines. But from our preliminary assessment, not even close. And there are a lot of reasons why as well. So fossil fuel divestment is also important, not just in terms of how CBCP does it, but how banks, how corporations do it as well. So one more slide before I finish is just to highlight, according to the Asia Pacific experts that I mentioned to start my presentation in that same GlobeScan and Sustainability Survey, these are the following solutions that they thought were most effective in a positive way in the past year. So whether in the Philippines, in the ASEAN, or somewhere else in the Asia Pacific, they thought climate nature-based solutions provided the most positively viewed development, followed by sustainability disclosure, although Ma'am Agnes also touched on this a little bit, at 18%. And last but not least, bills, proposed laws. I should point out that during the previous Congress, our Senate did not really pass any climate bill, when you really think about it. PENCAS probably was the closest one, but it's not fully climate related, or not solely focused on climate. But the House of Representatives, on the other hand, has been very active, including the Klima bill. So please keep an eye on that, and please support the Klima bill. So these are what they thought were the best ways to address sustainability issues. For us CSOs, and this will be my final point that I like to raise, I like for all of us as CSOs especially to think climate nature solutions, sustainability disclosure, legislation, advocacy. Will these be our ways forward for 2026 when we deal with national government, LGUs, business sector, ASEAN, among others? Or are there other solutions that we should really focus on in the Philippine context? Because we're all stakeholders in the climate crisis. There's never been a better time than right now to start getting even more involved than we already are. For more information on what Aksyon Klima does, Facebook, LinkedIn, personal email. Our apologies for our website. I'm still fixing that. So again, thank you for listening to my ramblings. And if you have any questions, good luck to all of us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, JL. So CSO will be very, very busy with so many challenges brought about by climate change. And not only that, but you have been critically linking and dialoguing with the different government agencies so that we can have yung financing for action plans. Hopefully, we see that in our budget with the help of CSOs working with government, the energy transition, like identifying itong mga what they recommend as solutions for energy transition like WTE and nuclear. Is this really sustainable and good, or are they dangerous technologies that we should really look more into renewable energy instead? So yung biodiversity systems and there are also involvement in global actions, and that's good. So we wish the CSOs, we thank the CSOs for being very active, looking into these challenges brought about by climate change, and maybe looking at what we can do some more as we dialogue with the different government agencies and information dissemination to the public. Thank you, JL. Okay, that was very enlightening from the civil society's perspective.